You are Locked On Kraken, your daily podcast on the Seattle Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to this amazing game day crossover episode with one of our favorite people in the Locked On universe, Erica Ayala, host of the Locked On Kraken. Erica, you know there are very few things that delight me more than a crossover episode with you, if I'm just being full straight up honest.
We feel the same over on Locked On Kraken. Let the OGs and everydayers know we were going to squadcast it up and definitely have some questions that we want to toss your way. So can't wait to get into it.
Can't wait. It's going to be so great. Nashville, so used to answering questions right now. But we are going to start off putting you all on the hot seat. And look, just full disclosure, we've got to be honest and say October 15th, the Kraken came to Bridgestone Arena and absolutely humiliated the Nashville Predators, won 7-3, scored 4 goals in the third period because winning by 1 just wasn't enough for you all. We're not bitter. We're bitter. Kraken right now 9-9-1, but I want to start behind the bench with you all. We know that Seattle made a coaching change. What has the adjustment been like for the team, and what do you see as kind of the differences under Dan Bylsma and his staff as compared to Dave Haxtell?
Sure. Well, it definitely has been an adjustment. And I think we know that the immediate changes that Dan Bylsma and his staff wanted to make was to really have this team push pace, play fast. And I've said in the past under Dave Haxtell that I just was having difficulty understanding why the Seattle Kraken were slow out of the gate. Spoiler alert, that hasn't necessarily changed. So we're still trying to figure out the variables there. I think also what we saw from the Dan Bylsma era, and we have Coach Woods and Coach Jessica Campbell as a part of his assistants, is that instead of having kind of these stagnant special teams, specifically the power play, there's a little bit more creative flow. Players are moving a little bit more. And again, spoiler alert, hasn't necessarily always helped special teams, but we can get into some of the other reasons why. But those were the things that were promised when Dan Bylsma was announced. Those things have changed. Again, the improvement, I think you can chalk it up to this is a new coach, a new system. There are some new pieces also that we're integrating. So, the results have been a little bit up and down. But those are the main keys to me when it comes to what we're seeing and what we're expecting from the on-ice product.
Andrew Burnett, a little closer to the vest, so I know exactly of which you speak. You mentioned some additions in Seattle. I would be remiss. My co-host who couldn't join us today, Emma Lingen, would be heartbroken if I did not talk to you about Chandler Stephenson, because she was the Chandler Stephenson to Nashville champion. Of course, it did not happen, but talk to me a little bit about what you're seeing from him in Seattle. Is he meeting expectations? Where is he fitting in?
I think early on with Chandler Stephenson, you definitely see the promise there. He is a high IQ player, moves on the ice extremely well. And I think that, it's a big contract for Seattle, for the Seattle Kraken, long term. It's also one of the biggest, not the biggest, because we actually have 2 of them that are big time 7 and 7s.
Yep.
But we also haven't seen Ron Francis do this as a GM in his history as a GM in the National Hockey League. So I think we're still trying to figure out what the role is there. When we see him at his peak, I think it's been fantastic. We do know that face-offs are up, and a player like Chandler Stephenson, as opposed to like a Pierre-Edouard Bellemare, loved Pierre-Edouard Bellemare, great guy to chat with, and that, he and Chandler Stephenson, not quite the same. I think it's fair to say. Yeah. I think that's fair to say. I do think Pierre-Edouard Bellemare, one of his assets was he took a lot of time with the young centermen. I'm not exactly sure what that looks like with Chandler Stephenson just yet. I didn't necessarily, it wasn't as noticeable at training camp as it was with Pierre-Edouard Bellemare. So, and also he's not as talkative. So it's kind of like, just like what
Yeah.
we were talking about with the coaches, Chandler Stephenson is the Dave Haxel in this scenario. He is very soft spoken. I don't think it's a shyness. I just think it's an overall, like, I'm going to answer this question calmly, slowly, and in as few words as possible. Enjoy,
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming to my cubby. I hope you
Yeah.
enjoyed the game. Like, that's just his personality.
Yeah.
I think that put some Seattle Kraken fans off early because, we also had Brandon Montour come, and
True.
Chandler Stephenson didn't immediately, like, there wasn't an article up. I mean, that's not his fault, but we were kind of waiting on him to say, can't wait to join the Kraken. And, those things just didn't happen right away. But I really just think he's like, hey, if you show up and want to talk, cool. But I'm probably not going out of my way away from my family to do this. So I think it's interesting, his personality, very even keeled, which I think is great for this team because, as we will talk about, there's been some pretty extreme up and downs, highs and lows, including the win against Nashville. And not sure, we might have just kind of busted all of our offensive power in that game.
We're okay with that if you're all used up. We're fine.
Yeah. So, those are my thoughts on Chandler. I think he's still very much getting acclimated. I think he's a guy that, he's a low and slow barbecue guy.
Yeah. Yeah. He's a slow burn. I got you. I got you. Yeah. So you guys are already dealing with some significant injury issues. Jordan Eberle, Vince Dunn likely out tonight. You mentioned Shane Wright was a healthy scratch. So I just want to check in with some of the other players in the lineup. Andre Burakovsky, no goals yet. I want to check in and see, like, what do you see from there? And you know that I hate to bring this up, but it would not be a Kraken Predators crossover if I didn't check in on the player that has caused more PTSD in Nashville than anyone else, and that would be our good friend Ellie Tolvanen. So what do you see from Burakovsky, and how is Ellie Tolvanen doing so far this season in Seattle?
I think the answer for Berkey is a little more cut and dry. I think this is a guy that is healthy for the first time, and we're hoping
in a long time,
for the, knock on some wood, for the first time, certainly since he's been with the Seattle Kraken. And, we've been trying to decide on the Locked On Kraken podcast how much trying to stay healthy has impacted him getting fully back to his game, because he's in a situation now where, again, there's a new coach. This coach has no qualms in sending messages. We'll talk about that, I'm sure. And I kind of use the air quotes, not because I think he's being, it's not a covert mission. Again, he's a pretty open guy. I just think that, sending messages can go so many different ways. But with Andre Burakovsky, I think that the Seattle Kraken haven't seen the best potential in his game. And a lot of that has to do with him being injured. I think in this season, and he's talked about this, we talked about this on the episode right before the Rangers game. He's talked about how he's been a little bit in his head. He even used the term confidence, that he has sometimes, he's trying to get back to his confidence, which that's kind of huge for an athlete to talk about that openly. So for him, I think you do see that the wear of not getting goals is something that's in his head. And the fact that he's able to create, I'm extremely excited about, because my take on Berkey, Andre Burakovsky, before this season was that he's a straight down your throat kind of offensive player. And I think that came because he was, I say this term all the time, we put a lot of eggs in the Berkey basket as far as offense. Last year, we did not replace the 100 plus goals from our fourth line. And everyone was like, it'll be fine, Erica, host of Locked On Kraken, because we have Andre Burakovsky. And I was like, but do we? And boom, there you go. So, I think in the past, there was a lot of expectation for him to produce and to be a leader when it comes to the offense. I think that the way the system for Dan Bylsma works is a little bit different, and there's not that much pressure. Again, I think he's still trying to figure out who he is as a skater once he's healthy for this team. But I think Burakovsky is also smart enough to know, again, going back to the messages sent, that he needs to produce. And if he's not going to find the back of the net, it's just not happening right now, not for lack of opportunities and good looks. Just sometimes you get goalied, sometimes you hit the post, whatever the case is. But the fact that he's still contributing offensively, I personally like that growth. And so I'm okay with the goals not being present right now, but the offense still being there.
Yeah.
And then as far as Eeli Tolvanen, he's an interesting character. He's one of the players that Dan Bylsma tabbed early to be a part of special teams, really likes his shot. That's why he wants him on the power play. And with Eeli Tolvanen, and I honestly think the same, I didn't mention it when we talked about Chandler Stephenson, the same for Andre Burakovsky, not just because of the injuries, but because there's a little bit of we're in that in-between phase. I talk about this all the time with my hair. You know, I get to a certain hair length where I'm like, oh my gosh, I just need to cut it all off again. But I know that my overall goal is to get back a little flip. You know, I want to get to shoulder length, but it's just really painful. That's like the roster right now for the Seattle Kraken. And you have some elements and some pieces that you see the vision, you see the future, like that beautiful flow, like you're just going to be whipping your hair back and forth. And then there is just that length that you're at now, which is driving you crazy. And it doesn't fit who you feel you are as a person deep in your soul. And that's the tough part right now. So you mentioned the injuries. When we get Vince Dunn back in particular, who's on LTIR, again, also you mentioned Jordan Eberle, that has allowed us to bring up Ben Myers. When those two players, but particularly Vince Dunn, return, the Seattle Kraken, because of those 7-7 contracts that I mentioned earlier, we have to make roster moves. And that's going to be tough. I don't think that Eeli Tolvanen falls into that category. I think Yanni Gourde and likely Brandon Tanev are more of the culprits. That being said, Yanni Gourde, Brandon Tanev, and Ty Cartier are our most consistent line. Once again, the fourth line for the Seattle Kraken are the most consistent. And so I really hope that we do see Eeli Tolvanen find his stride, maybe a la Burakovsky, find a way to make an impact in other ways, because roster moves are coming for the Seattle Kraken. I personally don't think it should be Eeli Tolvanen, but you know, you have to play the game of how do you win now versus how do you future proof. And again, we're in that mid-range, mid-length right now for the Seattle Kraken.
Yes, absolutely makes sense. Good to hear an update on Eeli Tolvanen, sort of. Appreciate that. Really appreciate that, Erica. Of course, the Nashville Predators have a lot to answer for when we look back at that 7-3 loss in October. What do the Predators bring now? Well, Erica and I are going to talk about that coming up. Today's episode brought to you by our great friends at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members, and it is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. All you have to do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you can watch your winnings roll in. It's the way daily fantasy sports should be played. It is not you against 1,000 strangers. It's just you against the Prize Picks projections for your favorite players in your favorite sports. Prize Picks puts its members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When your picks hit, you can withdraw your money in as quick as 15 minutes. So download the Prize Picks app today and use our code LOCKEDONNHL, and you're going to get $50 instantly when you play $5. Again, that's code LOCKEDONNHL on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive that $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. So check out all the action at Prize Picks. Run your game. Today's episode is also brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Look, if you are wanting to see the Predators or the Kraken play this season, or you just want to go and make some great hockey memories with friends and family, you got to check out the deals at Game Time. Game Time is the fastest and easiest way to get tickets for your favorite sports, also music, theater, and comedy. They have this great feature. It's called Game Time Picks, and it makes getting tickets for your favorite events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff, and it's going to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you're not going to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Right now, Game Time is having an exclusive zone deal for the NHL Winter Classic event at Wrigley Field. Go to the Game Time app to purchase tickets, and you're going to get 10% off bleacher seating and 20 to 25% off on home plate area seats. Game Time has a low price guarantee, and they have the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. Rumor has it your people have some questions about the Nashville Predators.
Oh, yeah.
And friends in Seattle, I want you to know Nashville has some questions about the Nashville Predators as well. So go ahead. I'm going to try to help it make sense.
All right. I mean, honestly, the first question is just what?
What the what, baby?
What the what? And so I'm going to remix this one because this was a question that I also had. It's just there seemed to be so much hype, so much buzz, so much promise in the offseason. And then, I mean, again, we talked about the last time the Kraken and the Preds played, but it hasn't just been us. I mean, you did get back into the win column ahead of tonight's game. So that's, we love that. But what and why?
That is such a great question. It's an existential question that Emma and I have been wrestling with at Locked On Predators. And I think the best way to explain it is it was really a perfect storm. You mentioned expectations. July 1st, the expectations for this team went through the roof when you signed Steven Stamkos, Jonathan Marchessault, Brady Shea. You bring in Scott Wedgwood as your backup goaltender. And all of the sudden, the Predators become a team that could make this deep postseason run. And that is great. But I think it also plays a mental game on a team when that happens. We knew going in, and Emma and I kind of tried to prep fans for the fact that it's going to take Stamkos and Marchessault and Shea time to get up to speed. This is an entirely new system. Steven Stamkos, brand new team for the first time in his career. Emma and I always say you have to remember that these new players are not only trying to learn a new system, get to know their teammates, build chemistry on a line. They are trying to find the ketchup at Trader Joe's, y'all. Their lives have been turned upside down. So we talk about that. They're just trying to find the ketchup at the grocery store. Okay. So we knew that. The players who found success at the end of last season with this system and Andrew Brunette were not able to start the season replicating and picking up where they left off. And that, I think, has been the biggest challenge. There are a couple components to that. One, I think was almost this very subconscious, I want to emphasize subconscious, deferring to the new players. So I think that there were players who were like, I would take the shot, but I'm on a line with Steven Stamkos. And Steven Stamkos is Steven Stamkos.
Stamkos, yeah.
Is Steven Stamkos. So I think there was maybe some subconscious deferring on the ice to these new players. So you had players who were back but not replicating. I think you had this subconscious sort of deferring. And then some of it, I hate to say this, is puck luck. Nashville has the second worst shooting percentage in the league, only ahead of Edmonton, despite being 8th overall in total shots. They have the worst shooting percentage, 5.1%, when it comes to shots on goal. We have hit more posts and heard what I call the sound of failure more than I can ever remember. It's just been a little bit of that.
Oh,
I
man.
also will say, and I don't want to be super critical, but Andrew Brunette opted very early in the season to switch up the lines in games. And I think that really interrupted building chemistry. And I think that maybe set the team back a little bit. So it's really been a perfect storm of underperforming, of adjusting to these new stars, of new stars getting up to speed, and Andrew Brunette maybe jumping the gun on some line changes early. That's what I think.
Ooh, I mean, a lot of this sounds similar. Not exactly the same,
Mhm.
but very, very similar. I feel like we always have these parallel tracks, the Nashville Predators
We
and the
do.
Seattle Kraken, because we've started to, on my last episode of Locked on Kraken, I've really started to be a little more critical of some of the changes that are happening. Some of them are inevitable. We don't have Vince Dunn, Jordan Eberle, our captain. We actually have a captain. I forgot to mention that. But not in the lineup. So people are going to have to step up, and you have to have your aces in places. And so there's maybe a deference and not an establishing that for Nashville. And I think it's similar, but not in the same way for the Seattle Kraken. You want to throw spaghetti on the wall, see what sticks. I do like that Dan Bylsma is all about, hey, let's see what combos we have that are working in the event that we need to change it up. But when you're trying to find wins, maybe you don't change it up all that much. You kind of have to give something a minute to simmer. And the Nashville Predators, I don't know what is the right balance between kind of throwing things up on the wall and settling into things, because in the last 10 games, 2-4-3, so do you kind of keep the same socks on now that you got to win, or is that again, is it puck luck? We talked about maybe not the game against Nashville, but have there been games and where you feel like the team played well and maybe didn't get the win, or vice versa? You didn't play well, but you didn't lose. I mean, what do you see as like the best version of this Nashville Predators team right now?
I will say, I don't know that we have seen many games where we didn't play well and got the win. We've seen plenty of games where we didn't play well and didn't get the win. There have been a couple of games where I feel like Nashville did enough to win, but just couldn't close it out. And you know what? That part of that is puck luck. Part of that is maturity and skill set.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that Nashville has that. When it comes to switching up the lines, what has happened is Nashville is now really in a conundrum, because you don't know what you have because you didn't let it simmer early, but you are now in such a points hole, you can't afford to keep trying things. You almost have to dance with the girl you brought and hope for the best.
Right.
Because until this team is 100% statistically out of the postseason, which they're getting close to that, but they're not there yet. Once they hit, we are 100% statistically out of the postseason. I think you're going to see Andrew Brunette go, okay, now we're going to spend the rest of the season maybe bringing up a couple of young players from Milwaukee and really working on finding chemistry. But because of the changes early, they're backed in a corner. They don't have they have to get points. They have to get wins. And when you are under the gun like that, it's very difficult to try new things.
It's tough. It also weighs on the players. I mean, we've been talking about Burakovsky. Yanni Gourde was also very open and honest about that. I mean, you talk about waiting till you're statistically out of it, but I've seen some things though that perhaps the Nashville Predators, even before that, have said, hey, if we can't turn things around, we might need to get to that level kind of from a mental perspective at the front office level. I mean, it sounds as though maybe some of those comments were walked back. I mean, do you see a pathway where the Nashville Predators, even before being statistically eliminated, are just like, hey, this isn't working, bump all of your line changes. We're making changes at the top.
Barry Trotz Yeah, Barry Trotz, the general manager, is not afraid to say what he thinks. He almost, and I love this to cover him. It's so wonderful, but he also sort of talks in a stream of consciousness. So you sort of have to weigh that out. Like, he did talk about on the radio, he said, look, if this team doesn't get going, we're going to kick off a rebuild. But you have to understand what he means by that. Nashville is very fortunate. They have a now window, so we could, make a deep postseason run in the next 2 to 3 seasons. But they also have a not yet window because they've got a ton of really promising young prospects. Coachella Valley has seen some of those as our AHL teams have battled back and forth. Barry Trotz isn't going to do anything now that will cost the team in the not yet. So what I think he is talking about is he may, if things continue to go south for the Predators, he may move some players off this roster to bring up some of these young players and say, okay, let's just start getting you a little NHL experience. So when he talks about the rebuild, he's not talking about selling off big pieces. The Predators really can't sell off a lot of big pieces. We've got big contracts, no move clauses.
Right.
But he is talking about sort of turning over and opening up opportunity for the not yet players to get their feet wet. So you could see that Joachim Kimmel, Fedor Svechkov, Reed Schaefer, these are all some players that I think if things continue with Nashville in a way that they're not going to make the playoffs, you're going to see them get an opportunity in the NHL probably this season earlier than you would have expected.
Got you. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And I feel like, again, parallel, similar, not the same. The Seattle Kraken, especially bringing in Dan Bylsma, some of those not yet players are the now. But again, Shane Wright just recently a healthy scratch. And again, the sending the message, it was, hey, Shane, not where we need you to be. So just step back and watch the game. I don't think it's this like hard, bring down the hammer, we're punishing you thing. It's like, hey, we need you to perform. It's not happening right now. That's cool, bro. Take some notes from the sky, the sky deck and get back after it. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how the Seattle Kraken, they've already brought the not yets up, so to speak, because they need to be the nows, the Shane Wrights, Ty Cartier, Riker Evans. But honestly, I don't think those players are the problem. So it's going to be interesting to see how things move forward and curious to see which team is going to have to, between the two of us, make these adjustments. And as we get ready to drop the puck later today, we definitely want to talk about some keys to this game. And I still have a question or two about goaltending. I think you probably have some questions about goaltending as well. But let's get into that and get folks ready for the puck drop at Climate Pledge Arena later today.
Before we dive into all of those good topics, do want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 back in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, and it's all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats. You can view live play-by-play and so much more, and it's all going to be on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Again, get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
One of our loyal listeners, breaking down the stats a little bit and kind of wanted to know what's going on with Saros. I mean, if you look at, the goals saved above expected, those are pretty good. But the numbers, are not really good in other places. Is this a UC Saros issue? Like, what's going on with goaltending for the Nashville Predators?
I know that there is often a lot of nuance involved when you're looking at goaltender stats, but here's what I'm going to tell you. There is no nuance here. The defense in front of him has sucked. Like, there is no nuance. And I know that's, the stats end up under UC Saros's column. But here's what I will tell you. Saros we always jokingly refer to him as a crock pot, not a microwave. He takes a while to warm up. But this season, he's actually played really well. And you see that reflected in those goals saved above expected. What you have seen, and if you go back and you watch the highlights from the Seattle game in October, you're going to see this. The defense in front of UC Saros has hung him out to dry like fresh laundry on an April spring day. And there's only so much one person can do. And so when you look at the stats of Saros, and if you looked at the number of goals that have gotten in, so much of that is that he really has been hung out to dry by the defense, especially early. We added Brady Shea to the blue line. This is a completely different defensive system for Brady Shea. And he's playing with Roman Josi, which is also a very different sort of defensive position to play. And, even the defensemen who played last year are having trouble, at the beginning of this season. So much of what you see in Saros's column, I know you don't want to blame other people, but the truth is the blame is a lot on the defense. It just really is.
Again, similar, not the same. That's one of those latter points that I've been making. I don't always like how the Seattle Kraken play defense. Before the 4-game win streak that we had, I do think that was exactly what was happening. If you leave the far post open,
come on,
a good team is gonna score
every time.
And actually this year, it's been a little bit more of the forwards not identifying that their D-men are absolutely selling out, blocking shots galore in front. And then now you want them to cycle around below the goal line and also protect you have to shift down. Anyway, we could spend a whole episode talking about that, but we feel you.
Yeah.
And that's difficult because, you put your goaltenders in a really tough position. So sounds like maybe defense is something, generally speaking, that you'd like to see the Nashville Predators work on. But let's go this route. If you had your magic wand and you could say the Nashville Predators win against the Seattle Kraken, how would you fill in that blank?
That is such a great question. I think if they play a good 5-on-5 game, here's what's real. We have the advantage on special teams. Nashville right now has the number 1 penalty kill in the league. And my friends, it is chef's kiss to watch. It really is so aggressive. It's a new system. It's great to watch. The power play is coming along. Steven Stamkos is waking up. He's got 6 power play goals for the Predators. But where Nashville has struggled this whole season, 5-on-5. So if Nashville can get 5-on-5, play some tight defense 5-on-5, and if they can generate some good offensive looks and get to the front of the net, they can win this game. What does Seattle need to do to beat the Nashville Predators tonight?
Well, honestly, I think it's probably the same. You talk about the special teams, the Seattle Kraken, I don't think want to go toe-to-toe with the Nashville Predators on special teams. We're at a 17.5% clip on the power play to 23.3%, but we'd be going up against an almost 91% penalty kill, to your point. And this is not clearly a power play system that has found its groove. The penalty kill, again, early on, I do think our defensemen do a great job, but it's when we get hemmed in, when we can't move the puck out of the zone and clear, that it's those 4, 5, 6, the 4th, 5th, and 6th attempts sometimes on our netminder that get us into trouble. And, late in a penalty kill, giving up a goal. So I think we also want to play 5-on-5. I think we need to get more production from the lines above the 4th line. We need the top 6 forwards to kind of step it up. We've seen a little bit of that with the Matty Beniers line, Andre Burakovsky on that line. So I really want to see some of the guys that we are expecting to produce offensively get going. It's been a slow burn. I like that crock pot versus microwave. It's definitely been crock pot at the top, a little microwave at the bottom. So I'd like to see, maybe we get a nice stovetop meal. That would be great.
Wouldn't it be nice? A little convection oven never killed anyone, people. I'm just saying. Of course, the Kraken Predators face off tonight. Central Time. It's a brutal puck drop. 9 p.m. Central Time, past my bedtime, but y'all, gonna stay up and watch this game. Erica, I know you'll be watching it too, and I'm guessing you're gonna recap it on tomorrow's show.
For our Locked On listeners, and where are you and Emma hanging out these days?
We are a little bit of everywhere. You can find, of course, the podcast on YouTube, favorite podcasting platform. You can find us on social media at LO_Predators. And we are also over on Blue Sky too. So just search for us there.
Fantastic. Well, it is always a good time when we link up, and we will have an opportunity in March if no other fleecings or waivers happen.
Ellie Folded 2.0. Yeah, we know.
Exactly. So we will see. I would love to chat before then, but I think we can expect to definitely have another squad cast ahead of the March game. But Anne, thank you so much, and we'll chat soon.
Sounds great.